there, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology with Kepler College teachers. Today, we are delighted to introduce Michael Bartlett. Michael is a traditional and esoteric astrologer, author, and teacher. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you doing today, Callum?
I'm doing wonderful, wonderful. We've got full moon energy going on.
Lots to do with that Virgo moon, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the first question we've got for you today is that on March 26th, you'll be teaching a workshop titled Opportunities for Awakenings. And that's primarily going to be dealing with transits and progressions. So for our viewers out there, can you give us more details about this workshop coming up?
Sure. So I just got done finishing doing a workshop series on esoteric astrology, the basics, teaching the different rulerships, the planets, the signs, different meanings for the aspects. And this next workshop is going to be on the transits and progressions, which I really see as a great opportunities for awakening. Whenever you have outer planets by transit affecting your inner planets, there's just some sort of a larger concept, a transcendental sort of a concept, especially with beyond Saturn, that is going to be integrated in the personality. And depending on the consciousness of the individual and what's being going on, really depends on how those issues are going to change. What happened to me years ago is I moved to Santa Fe in 1999 and didn't understand why a lot of weird things were going on. I wasn't able to find work or relationship, and I didn't understand. So I went to an astrologer and I said, what's going on? I said, well, you have Pluto on your ascendant. He said, nothing that you consider irregular with your life and who you are is going to look the same when this process is finished. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a great way of understanding and learning about, if we all were able to be taught that when these outer planets are affecting our angles and our personal planets to expect these major changes, what a difference we would have in our experience in relationship to life as opposed to being a victim of life.
Wonderful. And that's a great description for it. So the transits and progressions, and like I say, with your own experience, Pluto, it's not an easy time. I mean, going over your ascendant, I've got my progressed ascendant moving towards my natal Pluto. So some of those themes, absolutely, absolutely. So can you speak more to the esoteric side, which you could, maybe not everyone is familiar with, because we're talking about different rulerships here, Aries connected with Mercury, Gemini and Venus and so on?
Yeah, so there's, well, first and foremost, I want to say, first, like an honoring to Alan Oaken, who passed away last week, who I got to work with for many years. And fortunately, with working with him, he kind of helped me to unlock the part of my brain that just could not grok the Bailey traditional work. Whenever I read it, I would just go like, oh my God, what obfuscation, how many words can you say to like state something simply? But it's mystery school work. So the intention is to like kind of try and hide things in plain sight. And so Alan really helped me to understand that. I just want to give him blessings on his path in this transition period. So what I like is, there's a whole different set of planet rulerships for the signs, which what I like about them gives a deeper sense of understanding. And like you said, you alluded to, like with Mars is the traditional ruler of Aries, but on the esoteric level, it's Mercury. And so when you think about it, what better way, wouldn't it be great for when Aries reaches that level of consciousness that instead of just rushing into things that is very Martian, they begin to ask questions, they begin to have dialogue with other and be able to see like, oh, maybe I should move this way, or maybe I shouldn't go straight in with a direct attack. It's using the mental and processing and other facilities that allow for a deeper understanding of what's going on as opposed to out of instinct and impulse. And of course, on the personality level, Mars is desire nature, right? So wherever you find your Mars, that's the desire. So how we can transform that and be able to see how we can get our things done without coming from a place of lust or that sort of thing. So all of the aspects, when all of the rulerships have to do with all this higher understanding of how the signs can present themselves and work with the different situations that come up. And for me, it just has been something that just helps me to understand things in a different way. The other very interesting thing is there are also 2 additional planets that are involved with esoteric astrology. One that actually, when I say it, everyone's going, well, yeah, of course, but we don't ever talk about in traditional astrology is the Earth. that which we stand on, you know, it's always 180 degrees opposite of your sun sign. So whatever, and it makes sense. And it's like where you find your dharma. And it makes sense, you know, wherever we have our sun sign, usually that sun sign on the polar opposite is one of those things that kind of gives us a little bit of irritation. I'm an Aquarius sun. Hello.
You know, I'm with you. Aquarians unite.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So across the way for me is Leo. And like, yeah, I have a hard time with Leo because it's like, it wants to be seen, it wants to be attention, but it's like, that's where my earth is. And it's in my 8th house. So it's this way of like, where I have to like land in a deeply meaningful way of showing up and letting my sun, because on the esoteric level, the sun rules Leo on both the esoteric and the personality level. There are 3 signs that actually share that. The second planet besides Earth is the planet called Vulcan, which is a sacred planet that lies somewhere between Mercury and the sun. The hard part I have with it is there are very few ephemerae that offer the options for really seeing where it is, but generally it's within 8 degrees of your sun sign. So if you have an 8-degree sun to a 22-degree sun, then chances are the sun is going to be right there in that same sign as your sun. But if you're like me, where I have like a 6-degree sun, you know, it could be Capricorn or it could be Aquarius. So I actually see it as it fits better for me. And I think that's where it comes in, is like, what does it work for you? How does it align? And that actually is one of the things I should have said in the very beginning, is what I like about it in the beginning of all the books is it states, take what works for you. These are ideas that are being presented, and we ask of you to go forth and test it and see how it works and how it plays out. So it's not coming from this absolutely dogmatic, you know, this is how it works, but it's just one of those things that it's nice to be informed intellectually on it and then to see how it plays out in individuals' lives.
Absolutely. And for everyone to take that in and maybe test it in their own lives, because like I say, I'm a 17-degree Aquarian. So obviously the Vulcan falls within my Aquarius, but it's a very interesting perspective on the Earth, because we, as astrologers, we're always looking out. It's the planets out, it's the fixed stars, whatever it may be. And we do forget that on a very, you know, soul level, as you've discussed, the Earth we're standing on, right? So it very gets missed in the picture, because we're always maybe looking outwards.
Exactly. And we live in our solar system, because our sun is what's called a second ray. One thing that comes in with esoteric astrology is there's the 7 rays, which have various qualities to them. The second ray is the ray of love and wisdom. Our sun is that energetic ray, and therefore all of our planets filter back that in addition to their own individual rays. So the edict, as we like to say in esoteric astrology, is for love and is for unification. So it's like it's taking all the polarities, is taking all those things that seem to be disparate and separate and in polarity to one another, and seeing the larger whole that connects it and how it all works out, and how it then also is as above so below, so that, you know, even though it's happening here on our little personal lives, it's also happening in all those levels up above into each of the levels. It can get very heady. It goes into this whole thing like with hierarchies. I don't really get into that part of it. I think it's just a little bit too energetically abstract. I have like 25 planets in Earth, so I really like pragmatic, you know, ways of looking
practical
at things.
How do I use this?
Yeah, exactly, right? And like how, you know, because one of the things that I really appreciate about esoteric astrology is, and here's one almost a little bit of a symbol here with the Kepler College, you know, with the triangle. There's one triangle. This is the triangle that's aiming up. That's the Earth energy coming up. And then there's another triangle that comes down, which is our spirit coming into it. So we are spiritualized physical beings. Spirit is physical matter at its least dense, and physical matter is spirit at its most dense. Everything is consciousness.
Wonderful.
And so what I like about it is, because I've always had this issue. I mean, I have a Jupiter-Neptune opposition from Pluto to Scorpio. So for me, I always see that as the sacred and the profane, right? But the truth is, it's all the same, right? It's all just different emanations of the various energetic rays of how life presents itself. So this is Alice Bailey's chart. And one of the things that I really like to do right off the bat when I do it, and you can see these numbers around the outer ring with the signs. These are the ray numbers of the sign itself. So Leo has 1st and 5th, Virgo 2nd and 6th ray, Libra's 3rd ray, Scorpio's 4th. So 1st ray is the ray of will. It's about getting things done. That is Pluto and Vulcan. 2nd ray is the ray of love, wisdom. That is Jupiter and the sun. Third ray is the ray of active intelligence, and that is the signs that have that are Libra. Oh gosh, Libra, and there's two others. Sorry, I'm going to pass on what the other two are at this moment. And then so each of them have like, yeah, so they just build up from that and then build with their rays for each one. Oh, so third ray. So fourth ray is harmony through conflict. That's Scorpio and Taurus. Fifth ray is concrete intelligence. So those are the things that where the idea is made into physical form. So that is Aquarius and Libra and and Venus. Sixth ray is a ray of love and devotion, Virgo and Pisces, and the seventh ray is the ray of synthesis, of bringing everything all together. So it's just like these other ways of like adding these flavors. So what I like to do is I lay that out, and then I look to see where the other planets are in relationship. And where I see it is right here in her. Gemini is the second ray sign. The sun is the second ray planet. So we've got a double second ray in the 11th house. What did she do? She was the head of an esoteric organization of unifying humanity.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
You know, and you know, whenever I see Mercury in the 12th house, I automatically always think of, I mean, there's mediumship ability.
Absolutely, and this is such a fascinating example as well. And you'll be talking more about this tomorrow as well for the
tomorrow at the Astrology Day. So it's just kind of a fun thing to kind of look at, and that's just one little aspect. We look at the rising sign as being the soul's purpose in life. So I think it adds another whole element to that part of the chart. It's just what I like about it, just adds like a really nice deep dive. Just as an aside, and just because I know that when people try and read any of these books, they're really challenging. First of all, I'd really highly recommend Alan Oken's book on esoteric astrology. Here, called Soul-Centered Astrology. Excellent book. It's a lot more simple to do it. I've got free webinars that I offer on teaching it. They've got recordings through Kepler. I think it's really important to look at it as being kind of like working with a sun, what do you call it? A sand, what do you call that? The sands of time, a little sun, what do they call those time thingies? My mind
I'm with you. My mind's going too.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to take you along with me. But it's like, it's just certain, like allowing each little bit of information to fall, and then little by little it builds up. It's a big body of knowledge and awareness. And this is only one aspect of it. Alan years ago gave me the book Serving Humanity, and when I started reading it and then I put it down, I started reading it and put it down. And like after the third time, I was just like, you know what, this is just ridiculous. And I actually threw the book in the trash can. So I was so frustrated. And I was like, this is really crazy. And so then he was out here for his 70th birthday, and he said, you know, why didn't you come to one of my workshops and listen? And so I did, and something just really literally unlocked in my head. I mean, I can't even explain it. And there was just a way then, and then I started teaching it along with him. And in fact, there was a really interesting thing where he was saying that there's certain new world group of servers on the planet that we're all here that are dedicated towards helping to bring the planet humanity along. And he said, no, there's this one group that I'm not really familiar with. And something in me said, oh yeah, I'm one of those. And then he said, wait a minute, I'm just hearing now that I do know someone with that. So it's this very interesting way in which that, I don't know if the veil was very thin or what, you know, here it is kind of in Santa Fe at 7,000 feet. We do have fairly thin veil, but.
That's fascinating. And I think that speaks to astrologers on a whole. I mean, forever learning as we progress, and there's so many branches and so many rabbit holes to go down. It's fascinating that continually learning or challenging yourself and evolving in a sense. And does that bring it back to esoteric astrology, where you're talking more on a soul level rather than a personality or a psychological level? Is that correct?
Yeah, and so one of the things, there's so many parts about it that I really like. And I mean, yeah, I'm an Aquarius sun, so of course I have about an impersonal part already beginning. But one of the things we say is being personal to the impersonal and impersonal to the personal. You know, just like as we talked about with Scorpio and Taurus, I have a Scorpio moon. So, and like I said with the Jupiter, you know, I've got Jupiter over in Taurus. So, you know, it's this thing of like, these two signs kind of have to get sick and tired of themselves. They have to kind of get sick and tired of the drama. To get my good friend of mine, Aaron Sullivan, who's like got all the Scorpio energy, says, you know, Scorpio has to get sick and tired of itself to be able to do something. It's so true. It's like, it's got to go, hey, you know what? This kind of drama is not feeling good anymore. You know, I'm in my 50s now and I just want to like take it easy, you know. So then hopefully, you know, that's when these situations, and that's what the workshop this next weekend is going to be about, is you know, these outer planets come in and they hit something and they kind of awaken something in us, and they say like, hey, wait a minute, there's something larger, there's something greater. I don't have to keep myself in these ongoing painful situations with other people, with work, you know, whatever it is in life, those things that you kind of keep having the experiences of. It's like one of those things that allows you to kind of pull in like an aspect of a periscope in oneself, which, you know, as Aquarians are really great at. We just like all of a sudden like pop out for a little bit and we go, hey, I think there's another way to do this. Thank God for that Uranian part, because otherwise that Saturn part keeps us so stuck.
Right.
Which I think is really important. If you don't, and I don't know if you agree with this, if you don't look at both those planets for ruling Aquarius on the traditional levels, then you don't get Aquarians.
It's that weird dichotomy, isn't it? It's the, you know, once we can get very fixed in ideas, but also that Uranian energy as well, and it's fascinating. So I highly recommend this workshop next week. And for everybody out there, again, it's on the 26th, which is a week on Saturday, I believe. And is that from 9 to 11 Pacific time AM? Yep. Yeah, fantastic. And we're going to put the link in the description below this video, so if everyone can click on there and register for next week. And that's fascinating. And this is such a wonderful chart example. So in addition to the workshop, you've also got another workshop, which is on April the 23rd. And this will be to do, I love the title. Is it called the Wizard Moon?
Yeah, you know, the hard part with astrology, you kind of have to come up with these like kind of sexy words, sexy ways of explaining things, because otherwise, you know, people, if you say the 12th house, people get scared. So yeah, having a 12th house moon, I'm having my Neptune there. It's been a lifelong experience of learning and understanding. And I find the 12th house to be such a rich placement. And if there's one little takeaway that I think everyone should see when it comes to the 12th house, is see it as the house of projection.
Fascinating.
Because it's that part in ourselves that we put off on other people that we have a hard time owning for ourselves.
So is the 12th, the Wizard Moon, is it just about natal 12th house moon, or is it, because it's quite fascinating that we're speaking today, because my progress moon is just going now through for the 12th house for a time. So is this just natal? Is this, how does that work?
So yeah, I mean, I really love that you bring up that point, because there are those of us who have it natally, of course, but then of course, every one of us has it by transit every month, once for 2.5 days, right? Yep. And then, as you said, every 28 years, we have it for 2.5 years. So you have this wonderful, deepening experience where, you know, it's really going to be good for you to be nurturing yourself and taking care of yourself, reconnecting with your past, doing a lot of dream work. It's just such a rich field. And I think, you know, our society has stepped so far away from these parts of ourselves because it's not outward.
Absolutely.
It's very internal.
Absolutely. It's funny because my the last 2 days I've had the monthly 12th house moon zip through, and then I've got the progressed as well. So, but I love your descriptions for the workshop as well. And is there any more you'd like to add to that particular workshop?
I would just say, you know, that part with the progression, and then also by element, you know, it's whatever that element is that you have in your 12th house is just such a rich, rejuvenating aspect for yourself. Years ago, my first workshop that I got to do was with Alan in Bali, and I did it on the 12th house. And what I found was amazingly fascinating was that even people who don't have any planets in their 12th house, just talking about the sign of their 12th house and connecting it with people created this amazing bond within everyone in the room. So it's like, you know, there's just such a deep, you know, it's our connection with our ancestry, with our spiritual line, with that which is unseen. I don't tend to take as much of the I'm not a negative person. I'm Sag rising, Aquarius sun. I'm a Scorpio moon, of course, sees there's darkness everywhere, but it's like sees that there's so much light. So it's like, yeah, of course. So it's like I don't have that thing about I don't look at it as being the unseen enemies and that kind of a painful thing. I just see it as that place where the more that we bring awareness into it and the more that we learn about taking care of ourselves in those spaces, then those ways that we can transform ourselves, allowing ourselves to be more receptive, allowing ourselves to be in a place of receiving, and not doing necessarily.
I love that description as well. And speaking for myself, I mean, people who are learning astrology, I mean, it's really the 8th and the 12th house, houses that become really misunderstood and maybe some of the most difficult houses to understand, really.
And I would actually really add the 4th in there. I think it's just water. I think there are unseen depths when it comes to water, and there are ways that things can be working under the surface. And so, especially with the water moons in the 12th house, I mean, there's just so much emotional, subconscious, and unconscious content available. And so that's where it's really great. There's a wonderful astrologer. Oh my God, my mind just blanked on her name. Tracy Marks. I love her work. She really was the one who kind of helped me understand like the depth and the width of the 12th house. And so that also put me, also did a therapeutic training that's called core energetics. It's body oriented psychotherapy. And she really recommended that for people with Scorpio moons and Scorpio 12th houses, because we're kind of like, we have a bit of an ostrich egg, it's a little bit tougher to break through.
I love that. I think, who got, is it Nelson Mandela, maybe Bob Marley as well, got the 12th house Scorpio moon, is that correct? And that's quite interesting. I mean, Nelson Mandela, obviously that humanitarian quality, but spending that time, maybe hidden enemies, but spending that time in prison, but then flourishing and coming out as the first Black president of South Africa, sorry. And Bob Marley, that spiritual music that he pushed out for so many years is wonderful. And I believe they have it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Mila Jovovich, who was in The Fifth Element, and the actress, and Scarlett Johansson, they're both 12th house Scorpio moons. So
fascinating.
Scarlett Johansson, I mean, the magnetic quality, I mean, you can sense the magnetic quality in that, because people, what I like to say is, whenever it comes to any of my Scorpio peep friends, is like, oh, I do a reading, it's like, so do you ever just sitting there minding your own business and people come up and just share like the deepest, weirdest stuff? Like, I never share that with anyone. If we all had a quarter for every time we were told that, I mean, we'd be multi-billionaires by this point.
Fascinating. So the last question I've got for you today, and I love to ask everyone who comes on the show, is how did you start your astrological journey, and how did you get to where you are today? I know that's a very long, question.
Yeah. Well, my first one, I mean, I'm originally from California. I went to UC Santa Cruz for college. So of course I had a reading when I was 18. In fact, I just read it just the other day, or listened to it. And I wish that I had the ability to have allowed in what he said in the reading, because it was so powerful. So that, and then moving here to Santa Fe and learning about Pluto on the ascendant, having the psychology background, and not really enjoying or appreciating the psychological way of looking at pathologizing people, even though they say it's behavior, there's still a way that individuals are pathologized. And what I appreciated about astrology right off the bat is that it allows for and accepts that we have cycles in our lives, that some are prettier than others. Jupiter transit is going to be very different from a Pluto transit, although it depends on what the Jupiter's hitting, of course. It just makes things bigger. But it can give like at least a place of understanding, and not like, oh, well, here's a pill and, let's talk about it in 10 or 15 years when that transit's all well gone and none of that stuff's even present anymore. But if there's the opportunity to come in and see it and work with it. So I had a reading when that Pluto, I moved to Santa Fe and all that was going on. Had a reading. He said it would be a 4-year process. That's when I did the 4-year training in core energetics. And it was just like, You know, Jung, it was the closest thing to Jung's synchronicity theory, right? Astrology gives us this understanding of why things play out the way they do. And so the new book I'm working on is linking up these opportunities of what the outer planets do, but using the moon as the central place of our psychological and emotional beingness, and the likelihood of the types of defensive structures and traumas that were experienced in childhood as a way to kind of help pinpoint and work with those sort of things if someone's on that path of clearing those things out. So that's kind of like with me. I mean, I have a grand trine in Earth that kites out into two waters, and you know, I'm here to really help change and change our view of how we look at life and gain greater understanding and empowering one another in ways so that we can actually be a better planet, that we can understand that we have way more in common, and that we're actually all here working towards a common good as opposed to all of our individualized BS.
And I love that description as well, and moving away, you know, from our ego needs and the personality to move to a, as you have seen in other videos, talking about the soul level and from a higher octave and consciousness. And I just love, you know, your eloquent speeches and how you work and how you speak about that. And that's wonderful. And you can find more information. Is it coremichael.com?
Exactly. Yep.
coremichael.com.
3 recordings on there, articles that I've written. I haven't written that much lately because I've just been so heads down in books. I have 2 books out, Astrological Mavericks, which talks about people with planets on the angles. It's a great resource book for understanding if you have planets in the same sign as your angles, or even just seeing the range of expression for each planet sign combinations, 48 possible expressions per planet, as opposed to just 24. And then Astrology, let's see, the other one is Astro Theater, which is a visual book of astrology.
Wonderful. I love that cover. Beautiful.
So it's fun. It's addictive. I didn't know writing books would be addictive, but I do have a 3rd house Aquarian sun, so it makes sense. Writing about astrology, so there are no mistakes, right?
It brings up to the other point of before. I mean, you know, a lot of people I see, it's usually in a time of crisis. I mean, when you were saying the Pluto issue that you had, you know, the most common ones that people talk about, you know, my first Saturn return was a doozy. It's my outer set malefic. It's a trouble planet in my chart, but you know, maybe the Uranus opposition may be tied to, you know, midlife crises and all these different things. But working, as you're saying, to help others and help people, you know, evolve to where they hopefully can be.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing that when I did the Astrological Mavericks, what I got to see was that there's this high amount of energy being poured into the individual, and without the appropriate level of guidance and support for those individuals, it means that the ways that they're going to express might not be very idealistic. I mean, I can't tell you how many murderers, serial murder, like the whole Charles Manson family. You know, Charles Manson and the women, you know, that he worked with, and I forget what the other guy's name is, but they all had planets in the angles, and a lot of them had planets in Scorpio, of course.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. I'm gonna have to read the book because I've got Mars in Aries, angular, I mean, conjunct the North Node too, and magnifies it. So in my early years, it was very impetuous and, you know, very reactionary to a certain degree. So as I'm maturing, it's taking or trying to control some of those things. But that's fascinating, the Manson family and the angles. So yeah, I would, you know, anyone out there to read that. But can you get your book from your website? How do you get hold of that?
Probably the best way is you can go to my website and you can see there's links there for Amazon where you can order them if you want, or you can go to your local bookstore, and I've got the ISBN number. I've got it in electronic version because the paperback version, it's 1,000 pages for Astrological Mavericks, and the Astro Theater's full color, so they're both kind of expensive, but you can also get hardcover. So it just depends on what you want to get, you know, but you can go to your local bookstore, or you can order it all through Amazon or.
Wonderful, wonderful. So for everyone viewing, not only will put the workshops again, the first one, Opportunities for Awakenings, on March 26th from 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific. We'll put that in the registration link below the video, and also the Wizard Moon, which will be on April the 23rd. We'll put that link in there, as well as Michael's website and his fantastic books will include in there as well.
Thanks so much, Callum.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today, and such a fascinating conversation. And again, we've said before, I love the purple bit. I'm gonna have to do something wild and dye mine as well.
I like that, because actually with your black, that'd be so cool to do like some color in there. So the first day I did it, I was at a restaurant and little girls came over, and they wanted to touch it. And I saw their dad was bearded, and I said, "Oh, you can ask your dad if he's going to get his beard done." And he called his daughters back really quickly.
Those Aquarians can get weird, and I love it.
Of course. Thanks,
Well,
Tom. Have a wonderful day. Many blessings.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.